Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at a review copy of Save South Vietnam, a massive solitaire game from Fortress Games. Now in this game you take the role of the US forces trying to defend South Vietnam starting in 1965, and the game can go as long as 10 years. So a game that is rather epic in scale and scope. You're trying to defeat the North Vietnamese forces and, of course, save South Vietnam. Let's jump in and take a look at the components and offer some initial thoughts. Let's jump in and take a look. Of course, this is an unbagging, not an unboxing, because everything comes in this thick plastic bag, including the dice we're going to need. So let's get this opened up and take a look. Now, a little bit on the scope and scale of the game. It covers the entire map, or kind of spectrum of South Vietnam. And again, as I mentioned in that first intro, this is a game that's rather large. It's 50 turns. Each turn represents a quarter of a year. So if you don't lose early, it could potentially go for over 10 years, starting in 1965. And the basic premise here, as we kind of open things up and look at them, is that you take on the role of the US forces coming in 1965. And you have kind of two goals, really, if you would. And the game goes through this kind of ebb and flow where initially you're going to be fighting against the Vietcong and the North Vietnamese army, and then over time your forces are going to build up, but you're also going to have your forces withdraw later in the game, at which point in time you have to have built up the South Vietnamese defenses in order to be able to function on their own. And your goal is that Saigon doesn't fall. When Saigon falls, you've lost the game as the US forces there. So a rather large scope and scale. And one of the things, as we can kind of see as we get in this seems extraordinarily well thought out. There's a lot of depth and detail here, but not a huge kind of burden of complexity either, as we'll kind of see as we look at things. But here are some counters. Let's put those off to the side first and start with the manual to kind of get an idea on the complexity. So 8.5 by 11, slight glossy here, and we've got 16 pages, but the last 3 really are the designer notes, and the first couple here, more of an introduction, if you would, and kind of the contents. So we're really only looking at like a dozen pages of rules. You know, it's rather straightforward. Really well explained. It gets you into the action quickly. I think one thing, I don't think this is a game that you're going to have to spend a couple hours reading the rules and then playing. I kind of skimmed through the rules up to now for about a half an hour, and I feel like I'm ready to set up and I'm ready to start playing, although I'm going to have to refer to the rules to figure out what happens in each of the phases. I believe there are 9 phases for each turn. Some of them are skipped depending upon certain circumstances, but you play through each phase in the turn, and then there's a year-end sequence that you go through as well. Again, 50 turns. There's only that 50-turn scenario, so this is a big game. You're going to be playing essentially the whole war as you go through this. So we've got rules for setup. Again, this is relatively straightforward, but it's relatively big print. Everything seems very well explained. One of the other things we can see here is the end of turn phases now. Combat rules. There are special actions. So we have the Tet Offensive, then Cambodia incursion and Laos incursion, as well as a couple of optional rules for U.S. independent brigades, and most of the units, as we'll see, are at the brigade level, and then South Vietnamese Marines and airborne units. So there you go. That's kind of everything in terms of what the rules offer up. Now, I should also mention, this is kind of actually how I found this game, as we kind of, let's take a look at the counters now here. This is also a first, I should say. This is the first time I've gotten a game where the counters are already pre-punched. So you get them all in these nice baggies. They look laser cut, maybe, because there's no real kind of edges or points or pins sticking out on them or anything like that. 5 different bags, and here you get a sheet that represents all the counters in the game, so you can double check that you've got them all. Let's open up a few here and take a look. Now, I did go through and I've been clipping the corners on them, although you wouldn't really have to. These are really sharply cut. I mean, these are good. So we're looking here at, I think these are the political cadre units for the North Vietnamese. I might be wrong on some of this again because I'm just learning the game now, and I'll show some close-ups on these units. Here we have U.S. forces. There is a step system for the U.S. forces in South Vietnamese and North Vietnamese Army forces. I think the U.S. forces have a 3-step. Each unit has its own insignia on it, so a lot of different historical detail of the units that fought in the war that are here too. And I believe each one of these units then is going to have 3 steps to it. For the US, I think the North Vietnamese and South Vietnamese have 2 steps to them. We've got a bunch of markers because, as we'll see in each region of the game, there's quite a good number of different things going on here. These are also relatively large counters. They look roughly 5/8 of an inch, so plenty of large numbers on them. If you have older eyes, I think you'll really appreciate the size and scale of these counters. These, I believe, we're looking at now are North Vietnamese Army units, and there's some an anti-aircraft mechanic. We've got bombers, we've got bombers and helicopters, of course. Here are the North Vietnamese forces and then more U.S. forces in here. Here we can see a B-52 right in there. So rather large and extensive set of counters here. And I think I was also talking a little bit about how I found this game. I'm reading Ian Toll's Pacific War trilogy, and in there it was talking about the strategic bombing campaign of the 20th Air Force. And I thought, I wonder if there's a game about this. And that's what led me to Fortress Games. And so this is a review copy of Save South Vietnam, but this is one of 4 games, including a 20th Air Force, an 8th Air Force, and then I believe it's Save Afghanistan Comrade, where you play the role of the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. So 4 different games that use a similar system to this, but it's been tweaked and modified and customized, of course, to represent the uniqueness of each campaign. So if you like this game, there's a lot more to look at from Fortress Games. And I hadn't heard of them before, so I'm excited to find these because I love solitaire games. This looks like a solitaire game on a very large scope and scale, which is, I'm excited to dig in and play. So what we're looking at now is there's one player aid that comes with it, and this is a player aid. It really has 3 functions to it. There are political cadres that are going to be received, and depending on how many you get, you roll the green die and the red die. This tells you the zones where they land, like where they come in. Likewise, this is North Vietnamese Army regiments received. How many come in? Wow, this looks pretty. 23 units. Wow, I hope we don't get there. That seems like it's pretty much game over at that point. But then you roll the green and red die to determine in which region those units are going to appear. And then there's also a special forces for the U.S. mechanic that you can bring into play as well. Now let's take a look at the map. So this is big, 36 inches by 22 inches, and it's an area map here. I'll open this up. I'll show a close-up as I'm unfolding it, and then we'll kind of take a look at some of the pieces we can see from this range here. Alrighty, so we've got a turn marker over on the left-hand side. We've got some helpful tables up at the top, and then some U.S. forces holding boxes on the right-hand side here, coming down here, we can see. But the main area of the map, as I'll kind of hold it here and hold it still, we should be able to see Saigon, I think, up here in this section here. Yeah, I think from this we can kind of get a rough idea. This is a thick stock card. So it's not a paper map, it's a very thick card map here, so it looks like it's going to be fairly durable. It's a regional map. You have 9 different regions in the game, and we can see them all numbered here. So Saigon is 1, Bac Lieu is 2, and then going all the way up through 9. You're going to be moving your forces across these regions, basically try to respond to different urgencies and things like that. But the regions themselves also are broken down into 3 different parts. We have a base area, then a populated area, and then kind of a rural, kind of outback kind of area that's here. And I think like North Vietnamese Army forces start here and work their way into the populated areas. And each one of the different segments and elements of the game have their own mechanic and own rules and things, but at the same time it doesn't seem to be very burdensome. I kind of looked through the rules again, it looks like, yeah, okay, I get it. I think this is the kind of game you can jump into fast, and you can start to play right away, and then after a few turns, you're probably not going to be looking at the rules that much. I think it's going to really free you up to think about the problems that you're trying to solve as a military commander in this conflict. The other thing we can see with each one of these areas is that each area has its own score track, and it's kind of two-dimensional. We have the police points here in the middle, and then we have a political point track up here. This, I think, police plus -1, police plus 10 is good, and then Vietcong minus 10, Vietcong minus 2 down here is bad. And so depending upon the circumstances and the score for each region, different things will happen. You know, whether you're going to get North Vietnamese troops appearing, or whether you're going to be able to build up the South Vietnamese army. And again, what you're trying to do, in addition to pushing back the North Vietnamese and the Vietcong forces to keep South Vietnam free of the Vietcong and the North Vietnamese forces, you're also trying to build up the South Vietnamese army and their police capacity to be able to be self-functioning as your troops get to be pulled out. As we can see here on the left-hand side, and I'm sure we can see on the turn track. I'll show a little bit of a close-up of this. We get turns in the beginning part, 1965 and 66, 67, where U.S. forces are arriving. But then, as we get later on, we get forces that are leaving. And so by later on in the war, the South Vietnamese really have to be kind of self-sufficient in order to be able to win the war. So looks like a lot of fun. I'm very excited. I'm going to try to bring a playthrough demo or maybe even an after-action report. I don't think doing a full playthrough would work because of the fact that it's 50 turns. So I suspect that would be a huge amount of videos, but I'm thinking about a couple of ideas on how to show gameplay and then come back and do a full review after I've had a chance to play it a couple of times as well. Let me know what you think. Very colorful, very excited to dig in. Again, I knew nothing about the company. Really excited to stumble onto them and to see how this game plays, but it looks like a lot of fun. I've heard very good. Save South Vietnam and then the Afghanistan game, I think, are the newer two games. And the 8th Air Force and the 20th Air Force have been around for a little bit longer, and I've heard very good things about both of the Air Force games. So I've got high hopes that I'm really going to enjoy playing this. Really looking forward to digging in. So let me know what you think. Have you tried the game? Have you played the game? What do you think? What are your thoughts? And if you have any questions that I might be able to answer, I mean, given with the understanding, I'm just digging in now too. This is the unbagging kind of first impressions types of things. Feel free to ask away and I'll see if I can answer them. So thank you so much for watching. Look forward to bringing more of this game to the channel shortly. Take care, everybody. Bye.